So, I'm your generic American protagonist on his way to scatter his mother's ashes in her homeland. Now I'm being attacked by enemy troops led by hilariously crazy Troy Baker in a pink suit. While should I stay or should I go by The Clash plays in the background. This game is going to be good. And that, ladies and gentlemen, perfectly sums up my initial reaction to Far Cry 4. After the intense and somewhat hilarious opening, you're dumped inside a huge overworld which basically constitutes an entire country. While there is a story, it only really seems to be there to give you an endgame for the most part, as it is largely forgettable, and the only character that's even remotely memorable is the game's villain, Pagan Min. And that's only due to him being the only sane man in the main cast while being crazily hilarious at the same time. Trust me, you will smile whenever this guy shows up. Luckily for you, this game's strength lies in its sense of freedom. The amount of stuff you can do in the game is astounding, and the amount of options you have in not just combat, but exploration is incredible. Seriously though, those optional Shangri-La missions are amazing. I heard that Ubisoft wanted to give this game a bigger sense of verticality than its predecessors, and it clearly shows. Rock climbing and grappling hook are mainstays in exploring the game's various areas, no doubt due to the many mountain peaks and underground areas you can explore. And if these methods of reversal are too slow for you, you get access to hand gliders, a wingsuit, and even mini helicopters. Honestly, this makes the game world seem a lot more dynamic. I've seen a lot of game worlds that only seem to focus on the flat surface area of the world, with only one or two hidden mountains or secret underground areas that generally serve a minor purpose. However, the world of Far Cry 4 seems a lot more, and forgive me if I'm using the wrong wording here, layered. It honestly feels like there's a bigger sense of perspective and scale, making the world seem much bigger than it actually is. As for the rest of the gameplay, I was surprised at how diverse your options are. Yeah, combat gets a little crazy in this game. Yes, it does boil down to either being sneaky or going in all guns blazing, and while stealth is more productive, being overly aggressive is a hell of a lot more fun. No doubt due to the weapons. A sniper rifle that can shoot through walls, a huge revolver that can one-shot pretty much anything, a machine gun that can kill anything in a couple of seconds, a bow and arrow that can double as a grenade launcher, and a freaking elephant gun. Heck, if speed is more your thing, hop on a quad bike, equip a sidearm, and go to town. And when you realise that said sidearms include a handheld crossbow, a sawed-off shotgun, and a grenade launcher, you can see exactly where this is going. Am I missing anything? How about unleashing your inner Beastmaster and sicking wild animals on your enemies? Hey, you haven't lived unless you've seen a bunch of fools mauled by a honey badger. Those little buggers are vicious. I've been meaning to take a look at some games that are considered quote-unquote classics. No harm in playing some older games that people give a fair amount of praise to, might as well see what all the fuss is about, and to see if they stood the test of time. Maybe not in the graphics department, but if the gameplay still holds up after all this time, I'd say they still hold a fair amount of value. One of the games that's been on my radar for some time now was the critically acclaimed Resident Evil 4, and I can see why people enjoy it so much. While this game does depart greatly from Resident Evil survival horror roots, the action game that we get as a result is honestly one of the best of its generation. Sure, the controls are a little awkward seeing as you can't aim while moving, but the game does a good job of teaching you the basics, which does allow you to ease yourself into it, and to the most part, the new freeing mechanic and new perspective can make fighting enemies easier, as you can now target critical points on enemies' bodies in order to put them down faster. Although this could be down to the fact that the version I played was the Wii version, and the controls in that are said to be the most superior. However, the interesting part of this new control scheme is that it actually forces you to be more tactical and pace yourself when fighting enemies to prevent yourself from being overwhelmed. And it honestly led to some pretty tense moments in later parts of the game. Especially with the regenerators. Fuck the regenerators. Despite the decision to focus more on action rather than horror, the game is still Resident Evil at heart. The game features the traditional cramped corridors and confusing locales of the previous games, along with the typical fiendish puzzles you've come to expect from the franchise, even though some of them were insultingly easy. The cryptic plotlines of the previous games return, with the basic premise being our leading man, Leon Kennedy, aka that dude from Resi 2, travelling some unspecific foreign country to rescue the daughter of the US president, eventually getting caught up in the machinations of a crazed cult who plans to use a parasite called Las Plagas to control the world by turning everyone into mindless drone zombie things known as ganados. I can say Spanish words! Woot! This time it seems as the game doesn't take itself nearly as seriously, taking inspiration from spy movies and action thrillers like Die Hard. While the story does feel into cliché territory at times, it actually seems like the game is self-aware, even giving us a few funny moments courtesy of Leon. He is fully aware of the type of situation he's in, no doubt thanks to his experience with Resident Evil 2, and he reacts to everything in this sarcastic and nonchalant fashion. It's especially hilarious when the villains of the game try to intimidate or threaten him and Leon just rolls his eyes and throws it straight back in their faces. Mr. Kennedy is not having any of your shit today, Salazar. Although, I doubt anyone can take Mr. Midget Napoleon here seriously. Tomb Raider is a game I don't have the means to play. The 2013 reboot, however... Yep, time for you to cross another entry off that list of games I need to play. Don't look at me like that, I know some of you are making those since 2014. If you didn't know already, or didn't have a memory like that of a goldfish, this game is effectively a reboot of the Tomb Raider series, while also serving as an origin story to Miss Lara Croft. It's basically taking a fresh at University Lara and dumping her on a mysterious island surrounded by storms and forcing her to learn how to survive, eventually running into a cult of crazy people who worship an ancient Japanese sun queen, and discovering a plot that involves storms trapping people on the island, the reincarnation of a sun deity, and undead samurai warriors. As you do. It's honestly a bit more down to earth than the classic games. Well, more so than fighting a T-Rex and a dude in a skateboard. Yeah, the PS1 Tomb Raider games were weird. Bizarre story premise aside, it's honestly quite interesting to watch as how Lara grows from this naive young woman into the experienced, hardened badass that we all know and love. As the story progresses, we watch as she grows past her fears, becoming more willing to do things that she would never dreamed of doing before. Even killing people, all for the goal of trying to get her and her ever-dwindling group of friends off this crazy island. As for how the game plays, yeah, that's a little interesting. Tomb Raider 2013 takes a lot of inspiration from Uncharted, which in turn took a lot of inspiration from the classic Tomb Raiders. It uses a similar camera setup and control scheme, along with using a similar third-person shooter cover system which Uncharted helped popularise, along with certain other games. Don't worry, it's not exactly a carbon copy of Uncharted, there's a few differences and a tad more depth to it. Contrasting the limited loadout setup of the Uncharted games, Tomb Raider gives you an arsenal of 4 weapons at once. A pistol, which later gets a silencer, an assault rifle that later gets a grenade launcher, a shotgun, which doesn't get any enhancements, but why does it need any? It's a shotgun, and a longbow, which later gets rope arrows for traversal and pulling things down, and fire arrows for you sadistic fucks out there. There's even a skill tree and level up system with unlockable upgrades for each of your 4 weapons. Naturally, you get a lot of options when taking down enemies, even giving you a few good stealth opportunities at various points. Weirdly though, these don't exactly feel as fleshed out as they could have been. It almost seems as though the developers are merely testing the water with this one, trying to see if this reinventing and reimagining of a classic game series actually holds with the modern market. And given how it successfully spawned a couple of sequels and brought the franchise back from the brink, I'd say this was one experiment that quite happily paid off. Assassin's Creed has always been a game series I've been meaning to get into. It basically is everything I like. Historical settings, interesting characters, action-packed fight scenes, and pretty damn good stealth. Typically with thematic franchises like this, I narrowed down my starting point choices down to the first game, the most recent game, or the fan favourite. So in this case it's basically 1, 2 or Syndicate. Unfortunately, life has a way of royally fucking up your plans, so... yeah, in hindsight, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag is by no means the perfect entry point. Luckily, the thematic nature of the franchise means that you don't feel all that disoriented. Plus, this is also a prequel of sorts to the previous game. Yeah, the Assassin's Creed timeline is... odd. Taking place in the early 1700s during the golden age of piracy, the game follows the pirate captain Edward Kenway as he tries to root other pirate captains as they attempt to construct a pirate utopia free from the rule of both the English and Spanish, eventually stumbling across the age-old conflict between the Assassins and Templars. It actually gives an interesting take on the usual form of the series. Instead of having someone be dragged into the conflict by random chance or by being an assassin from the start, when Edward meets the assassins, each one wants nothing to do with the other, and the majority of the story is basically Edward doing his own thing, even having him not being all that involved in major historical events at the time. Sure, he was there for the Nassau blockade and the death of Blackbeard, but that's basically down to coincidence. As a character, Edward is a massive improvement over the previous protagonist, Connor. He has a sort of Jack Sparrow thing going on, what with his charisma and general attitude towards things, but he also shows that he can learn from his mistakes and become a better person because of it. Naturally, as you'd expect from a game set during the golden age of piracy, the gameplay of Black Flag is split between land and sea, but the land section is playing similar to the previous games, except for more non-lethal options for stealth and a combat system that I'll get to later, and the sea portion is playing like the naval section of Assassin's Creed 3. Except more fleshed out with more weapons for your ship, better aiming controls, and the ability to board enemy ships or straight up destroy them. Personally, I prefer to bottle them, as not only do you get more resources to use when upgrading your ship, but you also get the opportunity to mess around with Black Flag's fluid combat system. It's surprising just how much more you can do with AC flintlock and sword combat system just by giving you 1 extra sword and 3 more pistols. It's honestly one of the most fluid combat systems I've experienced, as it's really easy to build for rhythm when attacking foes. You can basically dance around the decks of warships and land areas as you slash and stab enemies to death, breaking defenses and unleashing bullets into those that think they're safe at a distance. What's that? There's an enemy that won't drop their guard? Shoot him. If there's an enemy about to shoot you, either whip out your pistol and blast him, or use one of his friends as a human shield. Don't worry, this is the early 1700s. The flintlocks and muskets of the time didn't have that much penetrating power. Hooray for history! Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a truckload of Assassin's Creed games I need to finish up. See you in about 3 years. Remember how Hyrule Warriors hit #1 on the top 15 games I played last year? Yeah, Hyrule Warriors Legends wasn't as fortunate. Maybe because I'd already experienced a lot of it on the Wii U the previous year. Hey, I'm not complaining. Even if it's just straight up poor, I wouldn't have minded too much. It's one of my favourite games of the last console generation, but portable. Admittedly, the fact it's addictive as all hell is also a factor, but what the heck. So, yeah, it's pretty impressive that Nintendo were able to port the entirety of the Wii U version onto the 3DS cartridge, and still have room for additional content. Sure, there are a few frame rate drops on occasion, but it's not severe enough to make too big of an impact on the gameplay experience. Even managed to fix some of the problems the Wii U version had. Character balances are tweaked, new objectives added to missions, and some of the more annoying difficulty spikes are flattened out. For example, keeping allies alive is a lot more easier as the assist/healing system shows up a lot more frequently. Moving across the battlefield is also made easier, as not only do you get to control multiple warriors in each level, switching between them whenever you need to, but you also get a new item, the Fairy Ocarina, which allows you to warp to specific points on each map. As for the new content, I had no idea how much I wanted this until I played it. More stories always appreciated, and what we got was honestly better than I expected. Not only did we get an epilogue of sorts with maps and characters from Wind Waker, we also got a side story that takes place parallel to the main campaign. The protagonist of the story? Linkle. Basically a female version of Link who uses dual crossbows and a sword and shield. Her missions basically involve her traversing the land of Hyrule, trying to answer her calling and become a hero. Aside from Linkle and the Wind Waker cast, basically the King of Hyrule, Tetra and Toon Link, we also get Skull Kid from Majora's Mask, Medley, also from Wind Waker, and later DLC packs add Marin from Link's Awakening, Phantom Zelda from Spirit Tracks, and surprisingly Rabio and Yuga from A Link Between Worlds. We even get an exclusive weapon for Ganondorf in the form of his classic trident for all those 2D Zelda fans. While I haven't exactly been able to get my hands on later DLCs, hey, I've been broke for about 3 months now, don't judge. Despite not playing as the DLC characters, I thoroughly enjoyed what I was able to experience, seeing as all the new characters have some of the most fluid and flashy gameplay styles in the game, especially in the case of Linkle and Skull Kid. You thought Twilight Midnight was insane when it came to crowd clearing? Oh, you haven't seen anything yet. Remember those giant bosses? Yep, they fear these guys. Maybe I should do a countdown on these characters at some point. Yep, it's Pokemon. Well, it was bound to appear on this list at some point. So, yeah, Generation 7 is here, and oh man is it worth the wait. After the mild disappointment that was Generation 6, I was hoping that the heavily anticipated Sun and Moon would at least have enough depth to keep me invested with it. And, well, I'd say it managed to do that. The game formula has received one huge shake-up this time. Gyms and the typical Pokemon League are completely absent, instead being replaced by the Island Challenge. SOS battles allow wild Pokemon to call for aid at any time, which is also when you get stronger Pokemon, plus certain Pokemon can only be obtained this way, like our Lord and Saviour Goomy. And HMs are completely gone, thank you Game Freak! Yep, HMs have been replaced by the new Ride Pokemon mechanic, which basically does the same job at HMs. Honestly, all these little shake-ups are what the series honestly needed. Adding new Pokemon, new types and new mechanics is all fine and dandy, but this is basically taking an old car and giving it a shiny coat of paint. Sun and Moon are the equivalent of taking that same car and giving it a new engine. Still the same car in principle, but you're basically tweaking and improving how it runs. Engineering reference. So, yeah, the Island Challenge is a little interesting. Instead of battling a series of 8 gym leaders, we instead get a series of island trials where we perform a series of challenges before battling a totem Pokemon, which is basically a giant version of a regular Pokemon with boosted stats. Once you beat all the trials on an island, you get to face off against the island's kahuna. which are kinda, sorta, basically gym leaders. Except there's only 4 of them. Honestly, these trials were a fair deal harder to beat than your typical gym battle. Especially that totem Mimikyu, holy bejesus! And I appreciate the added challenge. Honestly, haven't had this level of consistent challenge from Pokemon games since Generation 4. Makes me feel that tiny bit better when I overcome a roadblock. The new Z moves are essentially a more balanced Mega Evolution as they're effectively last resort limit breaks into their power boost, and it's something all Pokemon have access to. And the newer Lowland forms give older Pokemon a much needed tweak. As for the Pokemon themselves, I don't think I've seen a more well-rounded roster than this. Sure, there are a few less than stellar mons like Bruxish, Palisand, and Crabominable, but those are more to do with design issues and minor nitpicks. The rest are honestly some of the best we've gotten so far, with certain ones like Sarina, Incineroar, Golisopod, and Vikavolt climbing their way up my favourites list faster than Usain Bolt strapped to a jet engine. Heck, even the design inspiration of them are pretty interesting, and dare I say the most creative we've gotten? Decidueye's Granite Ghost typing is because it's based off an extinct owl species. Lycanroc getting different forms in each game references the fact that it's a werewolf. The event Pokemon Regina is basically a clockwork or steampunk automaton, and Cosmog? Its insanely high weight for its size references the fact that one of its inspirations was a neutron star, tiny cosmic bodies with gravity hundreds of millions of times greater than Earth's. Whew, damn, where do they come up with these ideas? Happy 20th birthday, Pokemon! It certainly was one hell of a celebration. Uncharted 4, A Thief's End. Cast your mind back to 2 years ago, if you will. On my list of the top 10 franchises that I first played in 2014, Uncharted managed to climb its way to the top, and the little franchise that could has managed to do it once again. So, Uncharted 4. Taking place at unspecified time after the conclusion of Uncharted 3, A Thief's End follows Nathan Drake, who's apparently retired from treasure hunting and has settled down with Elena. Honestly, this is one of the better parts of the game. Watching Nate and Elena go through their daily lives helps flesh them out and make them feel more like actual people. Nate even goes against typical retired hero trope. Instead of failing to adapt to normal life or isolating himself from everything and everyone, he actually behaves a bit more realistically. He wants to get back into treasure hunting life, but is completely prepared to give it up in order to have a life with a woman he loves. Well, until his assumed dead and previously unheard of brother Sam turns up out of the blue with a clue leading towards the lost treasure of the notorious pirate Henry Avery, which promptly causes Nick to follow his brother around the world in one final adventure. They really wanted to capture the whole theme of one last time, not just in the story and tone, but also the general scale of the whole thing. All the environments are incredibly detailed and open, despite still following the linear structure of the previous games. This gives you a fair amount of options when you have to deal with enemies, and there's even little areas where better weapons are tucked away. Yeah, I know the previous games have done this, but they'd only seem to pop up in certain levels. But here I managed to find hidden goodies in pretty much every area. For example, who would have thought that this little rock formation in Madagascar would have hidden a flintlock pistol, which is a one-hit kill. Ouch. Aside from hidden guns, the open levels give you a lot more cover if you want to play defensively, and there's a lot more hidden routes that let you loop around and flank enemies and catch them off guard. It even makes stealth a viable option this time, as the previously mentioned cover and flanking routes give you more places to hide. You can even hide in vegetation now, which I'm surprised wasn't already a thing. As for the traversal and exploration side of things, the only major thing that was added was a grappling hook, and surprisingly this seemed to add a sense of spectacle to the game as you effortlessly clamber and swing through lush environments ranging from Scottish cliffs, African savannas, and a series of lush island jungles, making the game capture a feel of a playable Indiana Jones movie even more so than the previous ones did. And the series of trademark action set pieces return, and they seem to be turned up to 11. Especially that chase scene through the streets of Madagascar City. The game even adds a few vehicle sections with the more open-ended levels, and for the most part they're handled fairly well. The controls are responsive and the levels are open enough to give you enough room to move around in, meaning they don't feel as tacked on as most games like that nowadays. This is the Cyber Engineer, and A Thief's End is possibly one of the best ways to end the series off, and is easily one of my favourite games of the last year. Nate, Sully, Elena, it's been good. I'll miss you.